There's a flood of information coming out of the Middle East right now, and honestly, it's getting hard to separate what's real from what isn't. I want to start with something that just happened. A video surfaced, and within about 24 hours, major media outlets were reporting that Iran had placed a $10 million bounty on Barron Trump. Iran hasn't claimed responsibility for this. And today, I noticed that Israel's Channel 14 actually deleted the video, and people are now calling it fake. The claim was that this aired on an Iranian state broadcaster. We can't show the clip here on YouTube, but I noticed it even had that network's logo on it. So I want to get your read on this. What do you think is actually real here? Do you believe this bounty story is genuine, especially now that the video's been taken down? Or do you think something more suspicious is going on?
I don't believe the Iranians put a bounty on anybody. That's not how they operate. In the United States, the Trump administration and its supporters, and indeed, as you talked about in the corporate media, but also in the social media circles, there's just a tremendous amount of Islamophobia, people who just have an irrational hatred of the Islamic faith and those who practice it, and especially a nation like Iran that has defined itself in theocratic terms. They are an Islamic republic. We don't like that, we being the people who promote Islamophobia. Not me, not you, but collectively, the United States, the West. And so that means that we have a target audience here that is susceptible to anything that paints Iran in a bad light. And we've just seen this, over and over and over again, just the lies. Iran slaughtered 30, 40, 50,000 people in the streets during the protests. Straight up lie. 3,400. The majority of them were armed militants who were trying to hack to death and burn to death Iranian policemen, and who fired indiscriminately into crowds of peaceful protesters to up the numbers. We know what the truth is, we being those who pursue fact-based, evidence-based information. But all it takes is, ostensibly credible faces, your CBS Evening News announcer, or NBC or ABC, or you can have Piers Morgan come on and say this kind of nonsense and things of this nature. And then, of course, it's echoed in the social media realm by people like Laura Loomer, Sarah Adams, and just well-known Islamophobes who have very large audiences, and so it gets echoed around. Straight up lie. That's not how Iran operates. Just for your audience edification, Iran is a civilized nation, highly cultured nation. Its population is extremely well educated. They have more engineering degrees per capita than the United States. They have more PhDs per capita than the United States. They outthink us in every way, shape, and form, which is why they won the last war. They're just better at thinking than we are. And their politicians are reflective of this reality. So for Iran to go down the crude path of putting out a bounty on the head of Barron Trump, it's just absurd in the extreme. It's a straight up lie. Now you bring up some interesting points. It looked real. Welcome to the world of disinformation. Look, the CIA has been involved. If you remember, and they can be very sophisticated at this. Go back into the 1960s. There was a magazine called Encounter, and it was a literary magazine. I mean, it had some big names on there, some poets and some writers and some intellectuals all writing this stuff. And the whole idea of Encounter was to create a battlefield for ideological arm wrestling, not war, but hey, here's a chance to air some stuff and promote some ideas and stuff. And it was sort of left leaning. The idea was, of course, it was paid for by the CIA. And this was a giant psychological operation run against the progressive left by the CIA, which has been doing this for decades. And so has MI6, so has the Mossad. And now it's become even more sophisticated. Just so people know, we have airplanes. We call them, I guess they're HC-130s. But these are, and we have other aircraft too, but they during wartime, they'll do things like they'll fly around and they'll hack into broadcasts, and they'll put in videos and play them on TV. and the videos will have watermarks to make it look like they're the thing, and there'll be people speaking. And now that we have AI, you can actually get somebody who looks like somebody to say something that nobody said. And the Israelis are very good at this. They're very good at hacking into and injecting things. But the CIA is. I mean, we used to do it old school, where the CIA would co-op, like let's call it CNN, just to throw one out there. Let's say the CIA wanted to put out a propaganda piece that put the weapons inspectors in a good light, put the Iraqi government in a bad light. Maybe the CIA would coordinate with CNN and the weapons inspectors to produce this and have it broadcast as part of CNN's broadcast. Now, it's a CIA operation approved by the highest, but it looks like a CNN thing. That's old school. Today, we don't have to go through that lengthy process. Today, they can just simply manufacture on a computer a broadcast that says the most ridiculous things and inject it in so that it's played, and somebody can say, I recorded this off of the official Iranian channel, which appears to be what happened here.
This is genuinely dangerous territory. And honestly, I was telling people just yesterday, if this actually did happen, who are we to lecture Iran about it, given what the U.S. government has been accused of doing in the past in that region? It just feels like a strange place to draw a moral line.
Right, but it's not about yelling. I mean, not because it's two separate things. There's no debate that we murdered Ali Khamenei. No debate that we killed him. We admit it. President Trump bragged about it. Fact is, there's a story now coming out that Trump was at Mar-a-Lago having dinner when the people came in to announce that Ali Khamenei was killed. And Trump said, tell everybody. And so they announced that the United States participated in the murder of the religious leader of a major branch of Islam. And while they were announcing it, Trump sat there with his chest out like he's some sort of master king of the world. I mean, this is where we stand. But that's just us being irresponsibly stupid as a nation, as a collective. And I say us with all due respect, Sabby, not you, not me, but maybe not your audience, but the American people. We tolerate this crap. Excuse my language, but we tolerate it. We put this man in office. I voted for him. I'm guilty of that. But you know what? When you vote for somebody, you get to hold them accountable, doubly so, for what they do in your name. And so I do hold him accountable, calling him out for the orange-faced, obese buffoon that he is today. But why do we tolerate this man's continued existence? Why do we pretend that what he does is normal? Nothing he does is normal. But that's one step. What we have going on elsewhere, though, is disinformation. And the disinformation right now that's being used to promote the notion of Iranian savagery. How dare they go after Barron Trump? Come on, Sabby. Remember when we accused the Russians of a bounty on American soldiers in Afghanistan that turned out to be a 100% lie? We have a similar thing taking place today where they're talking about the Iranians putting a bounty on American service members. And I forget what they said, $30,000, but they'll double it to 60 if an Iranian woman kills an American serviceman. The Iranians don't operate this way, ladies and gentlemen. That's not how the Iranian nation operates. But Scott, they hang people by the neck until dead. Yeah, Mossad agents who murdered people, burned people. I'm not a proponent of the death penalty because mistakes are made. But come on, guys, we're Americans. Look at our prison system. Look at the people we put away. Innocent people we lock away. Remember the Rockefeller laws about marijuana possession by black men and how we just stuffed prisons with black men who did nothing more than smoke a joint while we kept all the cocaine sniffing college white boys in college untouched. I remember that. So please, the hypocrisy has to end. But it's not just the hypocrisy. We have to understand that what we can do to the Iranians and what we are doing to the Iranians can be done here at home. AI can create anything, and they can create. Look, Jimmy Dore famously talked about his computer being hacked by an Israeli-based program, and he said they got all of my stuff, they got all my private photos, they got everything. He said he's not worried about what he did. He knows what he did. He knows he didn't break any laws. What he's worried about, though, is with these images, what AI can do, and you can now generate, things and put it out there to destroy people's reputations. And If you don't think that the U.S. government would do that, if you don't think a state government, you don't think state police, if you don't think any police department is capable of this, you haven't been living in the United States lately. When you have Baltimore police willing to plant guns and drugs on innocent victims to up things, understand that now that they have these tools of AI, they'll be willing to do it. And are the courts going to show the scrutiny? We have judges who, I know this for a fact, I lived through this, judges who will work with the prosecutors to put anybody in jail, even if they didn't commit a crime, because they want to up it, they want to hype it, they want to do this. 3.5 years, no crime committed, but the judge and the prosecutor did their thing, baby, because that's how America works. You have no recourse to the law. And now we have AI jumping in, and this is a very scary thing. I'm glad that this has been exposed by the Israelis, but now we have a duty and responsibility not to treat this as a one-of, and to recognize that this may be becoming the norm, and that we have a duty and responsibility as consumers of information and as citizens who empower ourselves with information to be responsible about double checking, doing our due diligence about the information we consume, especially when it seems to be too good to be true.
Right. Those are solid points. And since you brought up intelligence, that ties into something else that just came out. Credit to Ryan Rosani for flagging this. Reports say Iran has warned that BBC Persian and Iran International could be treated as potential military targets. A senior Iranian general reportedly accused these outlets, along with Radio Farda, of working directly with Mossad, the CIA, and other foreign intelligence agencies, and warned their staff could be classified as enemy personnel. This is a pretty alarming development. I've raised concerns about BBC's role before on this show, but it seems Iran now views these outlets, especially the BBC, as tied into intelligence operations, including Mossad.
Yeah, not just working with Mossad. It's BBC, so it means they're working for MI6, who collaborates with Mossad, and they also work with the CIA. The CIA has its own, radio free, I forget what they call it now. It's not Radio Free Europe. They have that, but the United States, through the Radio Liberty and the and other broadcasts, we project Farsi language things paid for by the CIA, or because in the United States we made soft power, what used to be CIA soft power, we put it under the National Endowment for Democracy, and it's run by the United States Agency for International Development. And so, but anytime you see a British or American affiliated foreign language broadcasting service, it's 100% intelligence run. I'll just say that one more time. It's 100% intelligence run. If you guys want to do a test on it, go and look at the people who work for these things over time and then see where they gravitate to. They all have intelligence relationships. They all are spooks. And what they're doing is information warfare. And it's become even more nefarious now because it's mental warfare. Information warfare is propaganda out there designed to confuse a population. Mental warfare is designed to destroy a nation from within by projecting in disinformation and thought process, planting seeds that will then germinate, become doubtful, and create disruption in the society. We saw this weaponized. I mean, again, people will be like, well, why would the Iranians get irritated? Well, we saw the British and Mossad and the CIA use information broadcast in to send people into the streets, protests at the end of 2025, early 2026. And then Mossad used its agents to infiltrate these protests in an effort to create violence. This is where 3,400 people were killed. Nearly 4,000 people were killed. This was CIA, Mossad, British generated violence using these broadcasts to direct these activities. So these aren't innocent journalists. These are journalists who've been co-opted by foreign intelligence. And just so people understand, do you remember? It was funny. I saw this movie, On the Brink. Jeff Daniels playing Ronald Reagan. Now, the reason why I like it is my time. I mean, that was my thing. Arms control, Reykjavik, INF Treaty, the whole thing. I lived it. And so I watched it, and I just realized it's 110% Hollywood-driven propaganda nonsense. But there was an interesting exchange where, Jeff Daniels playing Reagan said, you arrested our journalists, and then Gorbachev pounded the table, but I released him, even though we knew he was a spy. And Reagan lifts an eyebrow. Well, guy's name is Danilov. He was a spy. He worked for the CIA. He was taking tasking from the CIA. The Russians had him dead to rights. He was a straight up spook. And then that led to hearings afterwards because, my God, how could this? All the American journalists were like, oh, you can't use journalists as spies because then nobody will ever trust us. They'll treat us like we're spies. Well, you are. But then there was a hearing in the Senate, and the CIA came straight out and admitted, yeah, we will use journalists as deep cover spies. Remember that guy from the Wall Street Journal that got arrested in Russia a little while back trying to buy state secrets at Ekaterinburg about the Russian missile production, and the U.S. was pretending he was a journalist? He wasn't. He was a spook, straight up CIA spook. This is what they do. The CIA buys journalists and intelligence service buy journalists, and then they weaponize them. Now, if you get caught as a journalist, you're a spy. You could be executed. They don't do that anymore, but you could be executed. But what Iran is saying is these outlets that you use to broadcast disinformation, to wage mental warfare against the Iranian people are military targets, and we're going to take them out straight up. And they have every right to do this. I know there's going to be outrage in the West. Oh, you're targeting journalists. These are not journalists. These are spies taking direction from their intelligence service masters. People need to understand that. If you have a foreign broadcast service broadcasting into Russia from outside of Russia in the Russian language, it is 100% certain that they are working on behalf of a foreign intelligence service. And if you have a foreign broadcasting service broadcasting in Farsi from outside of Iran into Iran, 100% certain that they are working on behalf of a foreign intelligence service. So please don't get up in arms about this. I don't want to hear any journalists going, oh my God, they're Look, you want to talk about targeting? I'm targeted by the U.S. government that's paid the Ukrainian services to put me on a death list and then try to assassinate me. That's called targeting a journalist. All right. But having the Iranians say, we're going to take out intelligence operations that are disguised as journalist outlets, that's not targeting journalists. That's just taking care of spies.
I want to get your take on where things stand right now. There have been reports, according to sources abroad, that behind the scenes, Trump has actually been looking for a way out of this conflict with Iran. And we're seeing signs of that. The U.S. hasn't carried out a strike on Iran in a couple of weeks now. So, where do you think this goes from here? Trump surely has to know they can't defeat Iran outright. And yet we're hearing about these new economic sanctions, this so-called D-Day the administration announced. So how does this play out? And more importantly, how does the U.S. walk this back without it becoming obvious to Americans who've been told Iran is losing? How do they exit this without exposing the fact that they simply can't win against Iran?
How do you pull a rabbit out of a magic hat? I mean, I don't know. It's a trick. It's sleight of hand. It's deception. But that's what has to take place here. You brought up Scott Bessent and the most embarrassing press conference in the history of embarrassing press conferences, because, I mean, I have to be careful what I say. I don't like Scott Bessent, and therefore I'm oftentimes guilty of saying things that have no relationship to his professional duties. So I will behave myself. But what a lonely, pathetic figure he cut standing there at the podium, pretending that he was some sort of modern day incarnation of Dwight D. Eisenhower ordering the D-Day invasion. Because at the end of the day, Dwight D. Eisenhower led a coalition of people who had been training with the United States for that mission for a long time. And when we went across the beaches at Omaha and Utah Beach, there were Canadians going across the beach at Juno Beach, and there were British going across at Gold. Free French forces were joining them. We had people invading Nazi-occupied France together with us. We had an alliance of people who agreed on goals and objectives. This pathetic figure was standing there announcing D-Day, admitting that we haven't coordinated with anybody, that we're just announcing this, and now we're going to go out and get everybody to join up with us. Really? Is that how you announce an invasion? By saying, here's what we're going to do, and now we'll go find allies. And then threatening the allies, if you don't join us, we will invade you economically, secondary sanctions, and targeting Iran. Just the pathetic nature of this. Understand that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is going to have a major summit in Kyrgyzstan, I believe at the end of August, early September. All the major economic powers in the world, minus the United States and what's left of the European Union and Canada, will be there, including Iran, the nation that we're trying to isolate. Iran will be at the SCO meeting, which is a major economic gathering. Russia, China, India, the whole world will be there. Iran will be there. Do you understand how pathetic Scott Bessent is? But that gets even better, because I think on September 12th and 13th in Beijing, the BRICS summit is going to be there. And Iran's going to be sitting there as well at BRICS, not just with Russia, China, India, and the rest of but with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The two nations that are ostensibly our regional allies will be sitting there talking about economic activities. Iran is not isolated. Iran will never be isolated. Scott Bessent stood there like an idiot. But here's the thing, because this comes into answering your question. It turns out that actually we haven't done anything. He made this big announcement of an invasion that will never take place. When asked specifically what sanctions have been imposed on Iran, he said, we haven't imposed any yet. We're simply warning them. And which secondary sanctions will be that? Oh, no, we're not going to do that. Why? Well, that would collapse the global economy. No, Sherlock. So what he's done is he's created the atmosphere of America putting the ultimatum down. If you don't do what we demand you to do, we will tear you apart. We will destroy you. We are the conquerors of the world. And yet nothing was actually threatened because nothing was done. Now what we see is frantic activity behind the scenes as the United States tries to come up with some sort of compromise deal about the Strait of Hormuz. You see, Trump needs to be able to say shipping is flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. He can't make it happen militarily. He's already tried that with his lies. 400% up. Well, when you go from 0 to 4 ships, when the normal routing is like 60, you say 400%, you understand how meaningless that number is. And we don't have the military capacity to make it better. We can't. We have no capacity. That's what happens when you lose a war. So now we need to find another way. So he's threatened an economic D-Day for anybody who does business with Iran. And then he's praying that before it becomes evident that Scott Bessent was just blowing hot air, that some sort of deal can be arranged where the Strait of Hormuz is opened up so that he, Donald Trump, can turn to the American people and pull the white rabbit out of the hat and say, because Scott Bessent declared D-Day against the world, we got the result we wanted. America's great. I'm Donald Trump. I'm the most awesome thing since sliced bread. I think that's what's happening here, because Bessent's speech was just a giant nothing burger. There was nothing to it. And there can be nothing to it because Iran will never be isolated. The only person being isolated is Scott Bessent in the United States. People need to understand this. If we implemented what Scott Bessent talked about, it would destroy the American economy overnight. Yep. And I don't like this because I'm finally in a situation where I can paint my house. I can talk to my wife about a vacation for the first time in 20 years. And now they're going to tell me that the dollars that I have are going to become worthless because Scott Bessent is talking about global de-dollarization. That's what he's talking about. If you don't cooperate with us, we will disconnect you from the dollar. Remember, Vladimir Putin famously said, it's not Russia that's pushed away the dollar. It's the dollar that pushed away Russia. Mm-hmm. Russia didn't want to de-dollarize. Nobody in the world wanted to de-dollarize. The dollar is a convenient currency. And the world would be more than happy to allow the dollar to continue to be the global reserve currency as long as the United States behaved responsibly. People need, again, I'm not an economist. I know you've spoken to many people who are so much smarter than I am on economics, but I do know this, that with the dollar out there, with the petrodollar, we've got guys, there's a lot of dollars out there, like trillions of dollars out there in the world today. Trillions of dollars. And you know what it allows us to do? Let's say you have $100 trillion. I'm making that number up right now, but out there. And we decide we need to print $1 trillion here at home. Do you understand that it's like a blip? The global impact of us printing $1 trillion is a blip. It's like, a penny or a dollar. You got $100 bill and a dollar floats away. You go, well, I got 99 still. I'm doing all right. So we got 100 trillion out there, and we go, we need to print another $1 trillion. It gets absorbed into this massive thing. If the world de-dollarizes, that 100 trillion shrinks to whatever our, GDP is. And now let's say we have, I don't know, what is our GDP? A couple trillion a year? 4, 5, 6 trillion? I don't know. But if you're suddenly printing $1 trillion with single digit, GDP as your foundation, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. That creates massive inflation that destroys the economy. Scott Bessent just threatened the world with de-dollarization. And as I said, the world is gathering. The world that matters is gathering in Kyrgyzstan and in Beijing later this month and next month, where they're going to be talking about alternatives to the dollar. If you're an American right now, panic. Yep. And then we come back to what we talked about earlier. What are you going to do to hold these people to account? Scott Bessent just stood up there and said straight up, I'm going to destroy the American economy. It used to be that we would ask of politicians, when they were running, we'd say, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Remember that question? It was always asked, are you better off today than they stopped asking that question because the answer is always no. It's always no. We've never had a politician in modern times who could say, I made America better for you during my term. America just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And now you have Scott Bessent saying, I'm going to destroy the whole thing. And Americans are like, all right, yeah, sure. I'll go order some more McDonald's and hope I can save enough money to buy an Xbox for Christmas.
Honestly, what's disappointing is that some people were
I will say the sad part about it is that some people were cheering it on, not realizing what they're applauding. I thought that was hilarious to me. I'm like, why are you cheering that on? That's going to impact us. And for people to even believe that China or Russia would go along with something like that, that just goes to show you just how I think naive people can be. I'm like, you really think that China and Russia are going to listen to the U.S. and say, we're not going to do business with Iran again? Like, no, that's not how the world works. Like, we're a part of the West, but the West is very small when you compare us to the rest of the world.
And right, look at the rest of the world.
Yeah, Iran is not isolated. They don't stand alone, despite what Donald Trump and others would want you to believe. That's actually not true. And these fighter jets. Why are these vehicles?
If you want to know the timeline of Bessent's lunacy, Xi Jinping comes to visit Donald Trump, I think, on September 24th. State visit, White House. I can promise you that this will not be an issue on that table, meaning that whatever nonsense is going on right now needs to be resolved before then, because Xi Jinping isn't going to sit there. It's like, I know this is something you wanted to talk about, and we'll get to it, but Radcliffe, some of the things where, CIA Director Mike Radcliffe has flown to Moscow to give an ultimatum to President Putin. And I'm like, well, no, that didn't happen. That could never happen and will never happen. A CIA director flying to Moscow, going into the Kremlin and giving an ultimatum to a sitting Russian president named Vladimir Putin. That's the kind of cannabis-infused wet dream nonsense that, fat people living in their mother's basements come up with. It's an impossibility, just like it's an impossibility for Xi Jinping, probably the top world leader today. God, come on, Donald Trump is not a top world leader. He's a top world joke. And Vladimir Putin, as much as I respect the man, the Chinese economy dwarfs the Russian economy, and the Chinese global presence is there. So I put Xi Jinping above Vladimir Putin in terms of global, impact. So here's Xi Jinping, and you expect he's going to float into Washington, D.C. and allow himself to be lectured to by Donald Trump. Remember Donald Trump, the defeated, fat, orange-faced buffoon, and how he behaved in Beijing when he had a chance to be a man. Man up, Donnie, baby. You got Xi Jinping right there in Beijing. Look him in the face, spit in his face, and tell him that the Chinese are a worthless race dominated by white American men like me, and I'm going to rule you. No, he was sitting there begging, pleading for something. Throw me something, anything. And Xi Jinping gave him nothing, sent him away empty-handed. So you think that that relationship suddenly going to transform into one where Donald Trump can call Xi Jinping in to the White House and start dictating to him, threatening him. Ain't never going to happen. And if China gets a whiff, if that's what the president wants, the meeting will never happen. So Trump needs this meeting. So Scott Bessent's blustering bull, I'll watch my language. I promised myself to watch my language, so I'm doing my best at it. But whatever Scott Bessent was doing up there, this will blow over. It has to blow over before September 24th, because mark my words, Xi Jinping will never enter a White House thinking that Donald Trump thinks he can lecture Xi Jinping. It just isn't going to happen. The king doesn't enter the residence of a prince to be lectured by the prince. And sadly, ladies and gentlemen, the United States ain't the king of anything anymore. Donald Trump is the prince of what's left of America. That's it. Xi Jinping is the king of the world.